and welcome to this Canterbury Regional Transport Committee meeting. As we're running a hybrid meeting due to COVID-19 alert levels restrictions, this means there is no public gallery at this meeting. Therefore, for those members who are joining us online, I don't think we have anyone today online, but if you are, silence will be taken as an agreement. I've been informed by Christina that we have a quorum, and I'll just start with a mihi whakatau out of Karakia to get us going. So no mai haere mai ki te riri ngā mihi kia koutou, ki tini te hui te komiti o whakawhanaki waka kia koutou ngā mea taio, ki ngā kai mahi, tēnā koutou, no rira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, Karakia whakataka tahau. Whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te tonga, ki a makina kini ki uta, ki a mātaratara ki tai. I hei aki ana te atikura, i tio, i huka, i hapu, ti hei mōhio. So thank you for your attendance. I understand there are no conflicts of interest. Catherine, you can go and get our deputation if you like. And we have a public deputation today from Rollo Wenlock regarding rail. I haven't got a lot of background on this, and we're going to give Rollo 10 minutes and just a wee bit of time for questions at the end of it. And I understand he might want to take a photo of us all, just to be able to tell people he attended.
That's just public law. It's not a deputation.
I've just been informed by Councillor Apanui that this is not a deputation, it's part of the public forum. So welcome, Rollo. You've got 10 minutes, Rollo, and then we'll have a wee bit of time for questions at the end. And if you want to do your photo opportunity, we'll do that at the end also.
Look at that, I'm in red. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on short notice. My name is Rollo Wenlock. I am a Cantabrian. I grew up here, went away for a few years, and then came back. And while I was away, I was doing a lot of technology things, growing a very large technology company that I started in New Zealand. Exited that a year ago and thought, well, living in Canterbury, what do I want to do? I don't want to innovate for people overseas anymore, which I've just done for a decade. I'd rather innovate for Kiwis. So we've started a company called Miro Rail. And what Miro does is design and produce battery electric high-speed rail cars. And these go on narrow gauge, which is what New Zealand has. We have 3,500 kilometres of narrow gauge across this whole country. They go very quick. They go faster than Kiwi Rail will let us go at this point, but with lobbying and whatnot, I'm sure we'll be able to expand on that. And it is able to create services that have not been able to be thought of in the past. So the hardware is enabling something that I wanted to share with you as a group so that you're able to think about different ways of approaching mass rapid transit in this jurisdiction. So if you think about a rail car, it's a self-powered carriage. It takes 50 to 70 people. It can go up to 250 kilometres an hour. Whether we get to that speed or not remains with Kiwi Rail. And it does things like Rolleston to the centre of Christchurch in 12 minutes. And we can do these services as often as the corridor will allow or infrequently as the customer demands. So we like to call it scattered demand, whereas the classic large engine multi-carriage train doesn't really work in the New Zealand context because they're massively expensive to start with and you only buy them from overseas and they always expect you to buy it up front. We've seen Kiwi Rail just spend $500 million on 57 oldish style engines, which is a bit depressing. We could have done that. And what you end up with is a mostly empty, expensive train that you have to pay for the next 30 years. Whereas we turn up and we say, let's give you next generation, 100% Kiwi designed and manufactured and investment backed, fast rail car for $1 million a year. So you lease it off us. And we do maintenance contracts. We make sure that you've always got the most up-to-date part of any part of the train because we're doing it all here. And as a company, we're only innovating for New Zealand. Everything to do with this company is New Zealand. All of the backing is New Zealand. Private investment to start with. We'll start doing a partnership model with government as time passes, and potentially an end point is that we become a government company. So we become the transport innovation group producing not only trains, but things beyond that. But that's later down the line. So the overarching thing I'm presenting today for is to say, with the addition of this type of hardware, the availability of this hardware, I'm hoping it allows you to think about mass rapid transit in a new way. We've got rail corridors that go across the whole of Canterbury. They're already there. They go to all the hotspots you guys care about. They go to Riccarton, Miro, Papanui, Northland, Hornby. They go to all of those places. The rails are there. They're underutilized. They're of high quality. Some people argue that they're not, but they are of high quality. And the machine that we're building is being built only for the New Zealand rail problem, which is narrow gauge, a little bit curvy, not quite so flat. And there are no other train companies in the world doing that because our market's not big enough. For us, we can make $250, $500 million a year when we've utilized our machines across the whole country. So it's for a New Zealand company, that's an okay turnover. You can be a sustainable business turning over $250 million. If Alstom or a competitor of ours from overseas came here, they would need to turn over at least €1 billion in a new market for them to even consider innovating for that market. So you can't even buy this from someone else because they won't be bothered doing it. So that's why Kiwi. So I say all this to say this is now available. You guys can now think of rail services, fast rail services, bringing in all the regions to the town centre, moving people around the town centre at speed. Step one is that you can put on a few services. As time passes, imagine city centre rails coming in and going over the roads, up on steel structures, something that's done in multiple countries very successfully. You create new centres, you have the train going directly to the new stadium. It goes into the stadium, people jump out. They came from Kaipoi. They go home to Kaipoi. And then you think about the economic stimulus that happens when you start to allow people to commute from Rangiora, commute from Timaru to work in Christchurch. Nobody's doing that today because who wants to drive all that time? Sit on a train, the internet is yours, the coffee is yours, the focus is whatever you want to do. Productive time. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Rollo. We've got a couple of minutes for questions, if there's any questions around. So, Mayor Gordon.
Thank you for your presentation. Rollo, have you talked to Kiwi Rail about this, about your idea?
Yes, I have. Well, there is no direct singular answer. The theme of the different types of people I'm talking to is let's do it. So how we do it is the next chapter. So for me, who is the customer and how do we work with the infrastructure provider? They're not crossing their arms and saying, no, this is ridiculous. They want this to happen, but nobody's turned up and said, we'll build it, you partner with us and we'll just make it happen.
So have you got any material that you could send on to us? Because I'd be quite interested to see what what it looks like and what you're proposing, perhaps through our secretariat that could be sent through, and we can have a look at your material from there.
Absolutely. And I mean, the material is mainly around showing you guys what you could be doing. So it's
Yes, thanks. Interesting concept. It happens overseas, high-speed rail. I suppose my question is, have you done any economic business study of this? Obviously, it's going to rely on people and a lot of people, costing. It'll change our bus system, everything else. So it makes a lot of difference. So have you done costings around economic viability of such a system?
yes. The short answer is yes, because it's.
And the other part of the question is, what powers your trains?
Battery electric. Here we go. 97% fewer emissions than driving or flying per person per kilometre.
Okay, Rollo, look, we were pressed for you to come in. and pressed for time, which is a bit unfortunate for everyone. But thank you for doing what you've done. And thank you for the question from Dan. I certainly will have a resolution we'll put up on the screen here now regarding you coming to see us. And basically that we receive the public forum from yourself representing Miro Rail regarding our agenda item 4.1, introducing Miro Rail, who are designing and manufacturing green rail cars in Christchurch, can assist with the technology, and we'll provide a reply to you as soon as practical from our point of view. And as we're coming to the end of our triennium, I think it might be an opportunity for us to have, if no formal discussion, at least an informal discussion, and how what you were talking about fits in the bigger picture that we've got in front of us. So thank you very much. We've got a mover for this, please. Thank you, Sam. Second, thank you, Neil. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Your photo. Yeah, you can. Everyone's smiling.
That's all it takes.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
That's good. Thank you. So what have we got now? 7.1. Oh. Okay, so we'll go to item 5, extraordinary business. I don't think there is any extraordinary business. Beg your pardon? No, it's not actually. Excuse me.
I'm just wondering how we deal with what we've just been presented. Like, what's the plan for that? Or will it be later in the meeting? I'm just wondering how do we discuss what that next step is in your reply?
We certainly can provide that for a slot later if we have a slot later, Sam. If that's what you want to do, we can put that into as a general business item. I mean, our intention was to write to him and make some contact with him in the next triennium if we're here, you know, and just see where that slots with all the rest of our stuff. But if you want to discuss that, we can start discuss that. Do you want to put that as? Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, you will be here, but you can carry all this stuff actually forward. There's no notices of motion, so we'll move to 7.1, the unconfirmed minutes of our last meeting. Would someone like to? Is there any matters out of those minutes that need to be corrected or amended? Okay, so would someone like to move those? Thank you, Craig Rowley, and thank you, James. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. 8.1, resolution status report. I don't know if you need to come to the table, Jesse. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. Everything's pretty much taken care of here. And that is on page 24 of your agenda. Anybody got an issue with any of the resolution report? No. Can I have a mover then and a seconder for that? A mover, thanks, Dan, and seconded by Nigel. All those in favour. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carry. Thanks for this hustle. We're getting through to the next bit, which is I think we're going to spend some time on, which is 8.2, and that's the emissions piece of work that's been done. And Claire, you're introducing this. So if you come to the table, it'd be great. If you can get out. So just before we get going, I'd just like to thank the staff involved in this, because it's a really, really good piece of work that you've been putting together here. And one of the things that it does for us is it advances our knowledge, I guess, on the region from a reasonably in-depth study of, you know, parts of the region that are identified there, and the level of support for solutions being sought by people who feel, I guess, a wee bit powerless to get involved in it. But this is a first step. And so, you know, our knowledge and awareness is no longer a problem. It's just the motivation to change, I guess. And again, Mara, you might have to carry this forward into the next one. We will get knocked out here. And that, you know, I look forward to the synopsis that you're going to provide on this. Obviously, this is a key piece of information for us as a reference for us, and will provide a bit of a background for us going forward. So over to you, Claire.
So yes, this is the research that was undertaken. It's taken a long time to pull it together, hasn't it? I think our first phone call was during lockdown in August last year. So on the basis of the headline target being set in the Regional Land Transport Plan to reduce emissions by 30%, we commissioned Research First to undertake some research on understanding attitudes towards the different transport solutions, because the pace of change is so substantial. And I probably won't talk much more. I'll probably leave it to Carl Davidson from Research First to talk about the research and the findings.
Thanks. Tēnā koutou katoa, everybody. Mr. Chairman, I've got to ask before we move on, what is the collective noun for a bunch of mayors? Gaggle. Right. Okay. Oh, I'll take that. Well, thank you. So this piece of work was, as Claire said, it was a significant piece of work. I know it's in your agenda. I'm sure you've mostly read it. It's based on three ways of collecting data: a secondary source review, a very large regional survey, and then the piece that we're most excited about, the empaneling of a community, so we could engage with them over a period of time to see how their attitudes change as they were introduced to more information. So it's a very solid piece of research. It's very robust, very rigorous. You can absolutely have faith in what I'm about to tell you. There's some really good news in this research. The first piece of good news is that there is widespread recognition of the need for change. So that's the first thing to know, that when we talk to people across Canterbury, people realise that things have to change. And if you just have a look at the bars where the green arrows are on the right of these curves, you can see that nearly 3/4 of people thought that reducing emissions will benefit everybody, that businesses need to do more, that the government needs to do more, and individuals need to do more. Widespread. And some of you will be thinking, let's unpack those groups that are in the red. Who are they? But actually the headline here is this widespread recognition of a need to do more. The challenge, of course, that we all have is that while there is widespread recognition for the need for change, the propensity to change behaviour is a little bit less. When you have a look at the research, what you see is a split. Really, you see about half of the community recognising that things need to change, and depending on what the dimension is, about 40% of the community saying not. The most interesting thing here is the last chart, the last bar, which says that the propensity for people to change their behaviour around work-related travel is the lowest. And we'll come and address that in a minute. So propensity to change, which means that we need to deliver a path for change. But more than that, what this research is really clear about is individual change won't get it done. And I know that that's the opposite, the fundamental proposition you're working with. This, to get to the target, will require both structure and agency. If you remember your undergraduate sociology, structure is the settings, the laws, the infrastructure. Agency is what individuals do. There is a widespread recognition that this is going to require both. In fact, if you have a look at that, 56% of people agreed that we need to change infrastructure, we need to change rules, and 51% of people said they need to change their behaviour. This is great. Again, widespread recognition of the need to change, recognition that driving that change isn't just about individuals, but it's about the things that we all do. And one of the things that sits throughout the research is this really nice change model that comes from NZTA, Whakamutunga, the whole avoid and reduce, the shift and improve. And we see this throughout the research in terms of how do we go about addressing infrastructure, addressing systems, and how do we go about thinking about individuals. If we look at just what they told us, what do they think is needed in order for them to reduce their emissions? Number one is improved frequency, coverage, quality, and public transport. So everybody's saying if we had better, more access to public transport, more affordable public transport, that would enable us to move towards the things you want. And then this idea of actually making it easier to own a low emission vehicle. And then thirdly, more encouragement of active modes of transport. So all the things you're thinking about, these are the top three, they drop out, but you can see that there's also quite a lot of support for things like carpooling. There is some support for making it more difficult for people to use cars. We'll come back and talk about inertia and defaults in a minute. The idea of being able to plan your personal transport through a personal transport planner. And then this one we'll come back to as well about how do you get urban form to actually enable the use of more active transport, but also public transport. The other thing that comes out of the research, which is really clear, is there is no one solution for this across Canterbury. So whatever you end up doing, you're going to need to tailor those solutions to the particular part of Canterbury that you're dealing with. And one of the things that's incredibly clear, and we'll talk about in depth, is what you do in the city isn't going to work for the rest of Canterbury. So you need two solutions, and those solutions need to be made up of quite different things. And of course, that makes utter sense. If you look overall, so across the whole of the survey, what you see is there is support for more bike lanes, there's support for more bus lanes, there's support for more cycleways, and then there's a cascade. But you can see that bike lanes are top of mind, bus lanes, then public transport, carpooling, and so on. What matters here is once we pull that out across the region, those priority scores change. So this is why what you're seeing is you're going to need a basket of changes in a particular area that brings together some of those active transport, infrastructure, public transport solutions. But what you do in each area will need to be different. If we think about the rural areas, and we start thinking about this avoid, reduce, shift, and improve, the research gives you encouragement and permission to be incredibly creative in terms of transport futures. So what comes up a lot in the research is that the urban form that we have in the rural areas makes it difficult for people to use public transport and access public transport. It makes it difficult for them realistically to use active transport modes. So thinking about what does urban form look like in those settlements is a huge deal. The ideal of creating rural hubs so people in those regions don't need to travel so far. Supermarkets pop out immediately. If you need to travel to get to a supermarket, then working with supermarket companies to provide supermarkets locally will actually help reduce people's travel. Thinking about increasing, and I love this one, improving the internet in some of the rural settlements will make it easier for people to work from home. So if you want people to reduce their transport behaviour, and remember we saw at the beginning, the part that they thought they would struggle to reduce the most is work-related transport. So if we can help them work at home, and we can work with employers to encourage them working from home, and we can provide what they need to work from home, that's going to work really well. In terms of what can we shift, again, out in the rural areas, if we want people to use the roads for walking and cycling, we need to make the streets safer for walking and cycling. We need more infrastructure for cycling. Now, this doesn't mean cycleways necessarily in some of these rural settlements. It just means places to lock your bike. Just more bike stands. We talked about bike stands outside supermarkets. Four squares. Bike stands outside four squares are a really simple place to get started with some of the stuff. Thinking about school drop-offs, because so much of transport is about taking kids to school. How can we get smarter about travelling to school? And then, because there will always need to be some travel into Christchurch, how do we go about making an affordable, timely, efficient way of connecting those regions to Christchurch? There may well be Rollo's electric rail, but absolutely people are interested in all of those things. And then this is one of the quotes that popped out. This actually came out of the forum, but I love this. People are recognizing the idea that actually, if we improve the services that are available in the settlements, that will reduce their need to travel. They're traveling to get to things that they can't get to locally. So if we could improve the things they can get to locally, by de facto, we reduce the need to travel. It's that classic idea in the city of having walkable neighborhoods. If we had neighborhoods which were walkable, people wouldn't need to travel as much. And then when you think about improving, what you see a great deal of in the rural community, again, incredibly refreshing and reassuring, lots of appetite for improved EV availability, infrastructure, notions of how do we do shared ownership so we can share electric vehicles. And then the one that's covered up on the right by the team screen says EVs that work in rural settings. So getting really serious about what does an electric ute or electric van look like, and what's its range when we put load on it and have to drive it uphill. Like, get really serious about giving us an alternative, and we'll move. So again, from a research point of view, this seems to me to be a really interesting challenge that you've been presented. but it's also one that contains huge opportunities and reflects an appetite for people to change what they do radically. And this is what a guy's saying, and exactly what I just said about the EVs, right? The idea being that no matter how much we say it, current electric vehicles that are available don't really work in a rural setting as soon as you start using them in a way that rural people use their vehicles. So let's find out some options that can really meet their needs. In urban areas, the solutions are different, but they're also encouraging because they're almost just as creative. The thing that comes out of your research, and to be fair, comes out of a great deal of the research that we do at Research First, is we just have to change our urban form. Like, is it any surprise that people struggle to engage with public transport when we build neighbourhoods like Wigram and Longhurst and all of these things, which are utterly unwalkable? And again, I'm sure you've heard this elsewhere, but there's a wonderful app called Walk Score. You can put your address in, it will tell you how walkable your neighbourhood is. I encourage you to use it and to use it with your friends. And what you'll discover is lots of the old neighbourhoods in Christchurch are profoundly walkable, and the new neighbourhoods in Christchurch are profoundly unwalkable. And we've built neighbourhoods that look like that. So is it any surprise that people struggle to walk and cycle? And this idea of working from home as well, really supporting working from home. This doesn't mean all the time. It could be 3-2-1 policies, but supporting people to work from home so they remove that need to travel, even if it's only for 1 or 2 days a week. In terms of shifting, people are absolutely looking for more biking infrastructure to make biking safer. Again, you know, CCC released their travel plan today, and we've seen that reducing car access is part of what they're thinking to do, but the public are up for that as well. And that explains, that talks to some really deep-seated psychology about human behavior, which is it's really hard to overcome inertia and defaults. And what you need to do often is you need to make the default different, or you need to make the inertia choice more difficult. And so actually finding ways to reduce car access to certain parts of the city would really help. People are looking for more information as well about their travel choices, their travel behaviours. They want you to work with employers. And again, what we're finding in the corporate work we do is that it's all over the map. There are employers who are calling their workers back to the office, doing everything they can to get people to come back into the office, 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. There are other people who are looking to divest their offices and getting their staff to work full-time from home. It seems like there are no national policies or settings about this. And then clearly people want more public transport. They want more frequency of public transport. They want the public transport to go faster. They want public transport to be easier. And this is some of the things they tell us: promote bikes, bike lanes, bike parking, have more car-free zones. One of the points that got made in one of the conversations we were in, I think it's really important to keep this in mind, is that towns didn't always have cars and weren't always built around cars. And if you look at the history of cities, they almost had to teach people who lived in cities how to live with cars back in the 20s and 30s. So it's only in a period of 100 years that we've created the world that we're in now, that we seem to think is the only way of doing this. Clearly there are alternatives. Those alternatives will require significant attitude change, but we could do this. We can actually change the way that people travel. And then somebody else talking about, how do you work with businesses to make sure that the businesses are encouraging and rewarding people to use active transport or public transport rather than cars and car parks? And then finally, in terms of improve, again, you see residents really looking for EV vehicles. Now, this is interesting in itself, isn't it? Because it's still a car-based solution rather than a public transport solution, but it's the one that they absolutely reach for. And in the same way that we saw in the rural audience, the urban audience talks about this notion of having shared electric vehicles. Why can't we just, why can't we have a co-ownership of electric vehicles, or find a way that we can pull with electric vehicles? And then, of course, they talk about improved PT and cycle options. I think this is fabulous. There's a huge opportunity here for all of you. Now, clearly, what this research tells you is that you're now in the behaviour change business, as well as changing the settings through the structure. You are now in the changing the agency. And the great news is for all of you, as I'm sure you're utterly aware, behaviour change is now an incredibly mature part of psychology and policy. And we know how to go about this. The Behavioural Insights Unit in the UK has invented this thing called the EAST framework, which means that when you're looking at changing behaviour, you have to find ways to make the desired behaviour easy, attractive, timely, and social. And by social, I mean social proofing. Demonstrate that you're not the first to do it, that other people are doing it. The thing about the EAST framework, though, is it does lean a little too hard on agency for you guys to solve your problems. So there's one more, of course, which is the notion of COME, which simply says to get the behavior you want, you need to have capability, opportunity, and motivation. And what the agency part of the equation does is it focuses on motivation. But actually what you guys are in the business of is ensuring that people have the capability to change their behavior through infrastructure and settings, and the opportunity to change their behaviour. And what the research has just done has demonstrated that I think a large majority of people in Canterbury have the motivation. I'm just going to say couple more things, then I'm going to go. We work a lot in public transport and transport change, and an idea we keep coming back to is a thing called an Overton window. And if you've been in politics a long time, you know what an Overton window is. And it simply is the idea that at any point in history, there are a set of ideas which are seen as being reasonable and sensible and popular. And as you get further outside of that, either left and right, you start moving into ideas that become radical and unthinkable. Clearly, you're now in the business of moving the window. How do you actually go about shifting that Overton window? And the EAST framework and the COME framework give you some tools to do that. And this is the last point I want to make. We've been talking to a lot of our corporate clients about Roman Krznarik's work, that Be a Good Ancestor. I don't know if you guys are reading it, but you should add it to your reading list, because Krznarik talks a lot about how do we get people to think long-term in a short-term world. And that's precisely what you're doing here in terms of thinking about transport. What you're actually trying to get people to do is be a better ancestor for their family, their community, their organisation, and their planet. And Krznarik's got two ideas that might help you. He talks about a legacy mindset. He talks about what is it you can do that you'll be remembered for? And there's a great quote that comes from Pericles that you might remember if you studied undergraduate Greek philosophy that says, you know, the real memorial to all of you won't be the words they inscribe on the statue on stone, but it will be the messages you inscribe in the heart of others who come after you. And I've always loved that idea. And the last thing I want to say is the other thing Krznarik talks about is this notion of cathedral thinking, that you've got to focus on projects that stretch beyond your lifetime, beyond your time in office, the cathedral projects that will really make a difference to the world that you live in. And I think all of this stuff speaks to regional transport as much as it speaks to anything. That's all I want to say.
Hey, thanks, Carl. Great hustle. Great piece of work. And the thing I really appreciate about you is your delivery of that piece of work through your verbal skills. And I didn't do undergraduate Greek philosophy, so you lost me there. But comments, I'm sure there are some around the table. This is a big challenge for us. It's out in front of you. The information's there, Sam. You just need to get on with it. Anybody with a question or a comment?
Sorry.
You talked a little bit about the people that were involved, and that it was robust. And you've got data that's in here based on TA. More data that, this is an actual conversation. As well, what's available for industry capitals.
So there's a full report.
Yeah.
And there's a full data set, and it'll be broken down by TLA. Some of those TLA samples, when we break down by the regions, might get to be quite small. So you need to be a little bit careful about that.
Yes, so for Mackenzie at Waimati and Waitaki, it was because it was the Canterbury region. It was a small sample set. So we got 100 in that. So there was 100 in Kaikoura, 100 Huranui. So yeah. Oh yeah, 1,500 across Canterbury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no reason you can't make the data available.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, available, and we made sure that we could get it at the TA level. Yeah.
Oh, look, thank you for this. I just had an interview with Heather Duplessis-Allen about our Christchurch transport plan. So it was good to come off that and into this, which is much better environment. It went as well as I expected it to go. I guess one of the things, and it was a slide you had a couple ago, and it was around the policy and the popular. And the problem is we are trying to shift it, right? And we're trying to shift it slightly to where it's probably acceptable, but we get claimed it's radical, as we've seen already with our transport plan. And I guess it's more of a comment, sorry, than a question about how we change the narrative to show it to actually, and for councillors and elected members all to try to be united and realising that we do have to move it across from popular to sensible, acceptable, and try and realise this is not radical. And I guess, do you have any thoughts on actually how you can do that?
Well, two thoughts that come immediately to mind. One is to work with the people that are already on your side, right? So build the coalition. And the research suggests that there's a huge one. They just might not be the people calling up Heather Duplessis-Allen's show, right? That's the problem. So build the tribe, and the tribe's clearly there for you. The second thing is that notion of thinking about your place in the great cycle of history. That wonderful Maori notion of whakapapa, that we walk backwards into the future, looking into the past. But thinking really hard about how is your behaviour going to affect your kids and your grandkids. I think most people realise that a lot of the behaviour is convenient, but it can't go on. So I think, and again, Chris Narrett talks a lot about this. He talks about colonising the future. I love that idea. What we're doing with the way we're living is we're just burning up resources that our grandkids won't get and our great-grandkids. So I think that's how we need to frame these conversations. And how we get from here to there, so we have these guys.
Yeah, in terms of how we get from here to there, this research will absolutely underpin a lot of the review in the regional and transport planning process. I've already kind of picked up on that, the piece of people not being able to shift the travel and the work environment space, and whether that means there's a sector level piece of work that could be done in that space, working with organisations like the economic development agencies in the different districts, and working with in the business sector, and how do employers support workers who want to shift. So rather than thinking at an individual level, it's the systems kind of shift type of thinking.
There's another point too, which will for CCC, I think, more than everybody else, which is there's really good research out of Europe shows that when they close streets to cars, people scream and say it's the end of the world, and then a year later won't go back, and would burn you down if you try and put cars back into their streets.
You just got to look at some of our streets like New Regent Street and Casual Mall. The best streets we have in the city, is because they don't have cars in. So.
There's an old saying, everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die. And it'll be interesting to see how you're going to get people out of their cars and do this to lower the carbon. It's going to be difficult. We all want someone else to do it, not us. So I'm looking forward to how it's going to fit into the transport plan.
Shouldn't you be saying we? Aren't you part of that solution?
Yeah, I did it. Yeah, and it is. It's we. Yeah.
Oh, just a question from me, and then I think we might just wind up unless there's anything else. But it seemed to me that there's some really good data here from communities that are a bit more, I guess, removed from access to transport. So, do you get what's the feeling we get here? Are they powerless about change? Are they ambivalent towards it? Are they lazy, or do they just lack the opportunity?
No, I don't get that sense at all from the research.
No, it was across the board in all the breakdowns, a high level of support to change. So in terms of that COM-B model, so the behaviour and that capacity, opportunity and motivation, the motivation and understanding was there, the understanding around you know, greenhouse gases, transport being a key part of that, which transport creates the most emissions. All of that understanding was there. The capacity and opportunity part was a big barrier for a lot of people. And that looks different in different communities. So that will be a challenge in terms of the regional land transport plan.
Yeah, I think I took something else out of the research, which is we're here to talk about transport, right? And transport's the lens we're dealing with. But actually, these people are just talking about how they manage their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And they use transport to help them manage their lives. And if you look at some of the solutions, it's actually about, can you help me manage my life in a way where I don't need to travel to Christchurch, you know, so much? Or some of the trips that I'm having to do now by car, I could easily do, and they say this in the research, I could easily do some of these trips by bike or walking if it was safer to do so. So not thinking about, you know, how, you know, as Councillor Levinson said, you know, like about not thinking about the transport and we're going to change your transport, but we're going to make your life easier, right? And more convivial. And we're going to do that by, so you don't have to spend so much time traveling. I think it's a really great way to be thinking about this. You're not making their life difficult, you're making it better.
Again, that's a great presentation. I love hearing from you every time you come in. I've got a question, and my question sort of goes to the core of some issues that I've noticed. A good idea implemented badly is a bad idea. So if I was trying to sell you this pen because you don't have one, my first statement is, I think you're an idiot. You're going to look anywhere else to buy this pen. Is that a fair statement? During the research, did you find anything to say that the implementation of some of the things that we've got, which would be a good idea, but implemented badly, is putting people off?
That's a really good point. And if you go back to the change framework, right, you know, think about easy, attractive, timely, social. You've got to, you know, like you've got to think about how do you present, if you're introducing more friction into somebody's life, how do you tell that story that makes them think that you're making their life easier or that everybody else is doing it through social proofing? So absolutely thinking about implementation. And if you think with a marketing hat on, how do you help them change the narrative, the story they tell about themselves that aligns with a new product or service is absolutely the way to go. I mean, you know, you guys are fortunate because you have access to regulatory frameworks. And so it might be easy to think we can force people to change. But that hammer should always be the last thing to be used, right? You know, that's the recommendation because there's a thing called reactance and you want people to think this was their idea. You know, you want me to think it was my idea to buy that pen from you. You want people to think they're the ones choosing public transport for the future and active transport for their own health and all of those things.
Thank you. I think we'll put the recommendation up before us. Thank Carl again for that really good report. And thank you, Claire, for the work you're doing here also. So the recommendations here on the screen. I've got a mover, please. Thank you, Murray. Seconder. Thank you, Graham. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. So thanks for that. That was a big piece of work which we got through really well. Actually, I thought it was going to take a bit longer, but good hustle from staff on that. So the next item is 8.3, which I think also you, Claire, isn't it? Is it 8.3 you? Yeah. It's on page 160. And we'll get Claire to introduce this, the forward work program for RTC.
Yes, so, and I've got a slide to share for this one. So I think it's more, not that one first. The wrong one. Is that this one? Yeah, so this paper summarises the work programme that was established at the end of the last RLTP and kind of a bit of a 3-year summary for, because we're at the end of the trainium as well. And as I put this slide together, I just reflected on how hard it was to actually shove everything that's been done over the last 18 months onto one slide. impacted a bit. A lot of little COVID blips in and amongst that, you know, the online meetings and whatnot. So I picked out one of the key indicators, which was road safety, and just kind of showing the COVID impact on that road safety measure. So 373 deaths and serious injuries in 2017. That was down to 283 in 2021, 24% decrease, but largely COVID impacted from that reduction in travel. We've done masses of pieces of work. So there was the freight tour, which you guys will remember, which led on to the South Island Freight Summit. We refreshed the Regional Road Safety Working Group and created a new strategy for that. Regional Land Transport Plan landed, and we've also done a massive piece of work on the website, which you guys probably have had less visibility of. We've been working on it for nearly a year now. And part of what I want to show you guys is these web pages. Maybe
You're finding that I think you've made a couple of good points. I think some of this stuff is due to the fact that Sam at the start of this term put some real impetus into this, and the fact that mayors are turning up to these forums has been really, really, really good. So thanks, Sam, for that. I think you've been a great assistance, and your energy around the freight, you know, the rail stuff has been great. And also Dan picked up the safety stuff, which was just a bit lacking there, and you've given that some light, Dan. So thank you for that also, Claire.
Yeah. The website review. So the purpose of the website review was to refresh the regional transport pages, and we also did the urban development pages at the same time. This was based on the committee's feedback that you wanted to have a stronger advocacy role across the issues for the region, and this tool, the website that we had didn't have the issues reflected on our website. It had the committee structure. So this is now something that public servants and central government agencies can Google and cut and paste statistics on when they're keeping people updated as to actually what are the issues across Canterbury. It also creates a better level of service and visibility for the public around the work of the committee and the regional issues. So we've totally restructured, and so you'll see here that we've got South Island-wide challenges, and then we've got roles and responsibilities, road safety, maintenance, resilience, emissions, freight, the population growth. Each page outlines the issues for Canterbury. So we've got road safety as an example here, the Regional Road Safety Working Group, and the strategy for the working group. And then we also have, and I'm not sure why that hasn't shown. Maybe if I hit refresh, it might come up.
Lexi Pro.
Oh, because they're draft pages. All right. Live stream data. So we've now each issues page has graphs that reflect the data that's available. This is the freight one. There are concertinas that you can break down that talk about the different aspects. Again, this was a lovely, pretty graph. I'm not sure. I think because it's an Internet Explorer, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. That's it.
The thing about this also is it's a great resource for staff and for other people, and you know, we can point people in this direction if they're interested in some of that stuff, and then we can get an informed question rather than a where's the data question.
One of the things I've noticed coming in is with a change in staff, there was often a change in the type of reporting the committee was receiving around regional transport outcomes, different ways of graphing it. We were using different spreadsheets. It was all manually done by staff to create the spreadsheets, which was taking a lot of staff time. And you guys are like, we need you guys to be right on these strategic issues. And we're like, we're fiddling with the spreadsheet. So now Now we can, this is all automated, it's all on the website. We can use this when we bring the monitoring report, and it frees up a lot of staff time. So we can have more meetings with MOT. So
it's a huge level of service.
Yeah.
Staff and transparency for the public. Having it integrated with the narrative to help tell the story of the issues across the region, and having key information up there, like the strategy on a page for the regional road safety working group, and minutes and agendas and things like that as well, all in one place. And based around the issues as well, tells more of a story, it's more engaging. There's been a lot of work into making it mobile compatible and to optimizing search functionality so that when you're Googling, these are the key results that pop up, and linking through into key working groups and stakeholders involved in addressing these issues as well.
Yeah. So we've had positive feedback from all of the groups that we went out to. So through TOG, Greater Christchurch Partnership, at the staff level, we've worked in with all of those guys, and everybody said it was really good, really useful. The data was really useful. So we're aiming to go live. So this woman here, Jamie, is our amazing web designer. She has totally been like a driving force behind this, and I owe her a wine. And we just got excellent feedback from everybody, which was really good. So thanks.
Congratulations on this. I think it's really, really good. When people ask you, what have you been doing? You can point to some of this stuff and say, look, we've encouraged this data to be put up and made available. That's how Jamie's done it. So thank you. Thanks for that. Claire, I think we might, if you don't mind, we might just move. If there's any questions of Claire. Is there anything you want to say to finalise this piece, Claire?
Just a reflection on the training and just a reflection over the last 3 years and the significant shift that we've made to support the committee. I think that we've tried to up our game internally to do that, and I hope you guys as a committee have felt that.
Look, absolutely, and most of it's in the room. Jess over there, and these two guys, and Sam's there too now. So well done, Claire. And at one stage there, you were just, riding the horse yourself, weren't you? So you've done pretty well. So thanks for that, Sam.
So I was pretty depressed about this committee, 3 years ago. And so we have actually done a lot. And so thank you. And this is just a part of it, and one slide capturing those pieces. Each of those represents a massive piece of work that goes on behind it. So yeah, thanks to the team that have been involved in doing that, and Peter for your leading us to get there. So.
Could I just mention too, I think the transport officers group as well, right across the region, all of your own transport staff have been fantastic to work with. So that's made a huge difference. Just the ability to work with people and know the local issues, like the emissions work, etc. It just makes a massive difference in our work program. And this is a collective effort. It's not just us at ECan. It's not just individuals. So just make that point, and also working in sub-regionally as well with the partnership with Greater Christchurch as well.
And we push out to South Island stuff, so that's great. So thank you, Luke. Thank you, Claire. Recommendations on the screen there. Can I have someone move that, please? Thanks, Sam. Seconder. Thanks, Neil. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. So we move to 8.4, which is the inter-regional rail piece. Luke, that's you, or is it Jess? It's Luke. So this is regarding a technical submission that we're going to make to the.
Thank you, Peter. I'd left my notes behind. This piece of this item on your agenda is around an interregional rail inquiry, which was first announced on the 11th of August through Parliament's Transport and Infrastructure Committee, opening a public inquiry into the future of interregional passenger rail. The inquiry has been set up to investigate and gain insights into the viability of passenger rail in communities, particularly in communities that are currently not served by passenger rail, and also to evaluate existing passenger rail operations, including the roles and responsibilities and governance around these services, and look at it in a much broader context around emissions and future stuff. The chair and deputy chair, Peter and Tane, of this committee approached us as staff to request that a submission be prepared to inform the members of Parliament involved in the inquiry and the broader public of agreed work underway to investigate passenger rail in the Canterbury region. So the paper in front of you seeks your support for a technical submission from Environment Canterbury staff with an opportunity for input from your transport officers. A technical submission is the recommended approach from us as staff, as it provides more flexibility to address some of the more process-minded and technical considerations with regards to passenger rail as relevant to a national inquiry. And it still provides scope for staff to signal an opportunity for direct engagement with government, if that's how we want to proceed. As a feedback, closing date for feedback is 6th of October, so it gives us quite a bit of time on this one. We haven't yet begun drafting a submission, but the paper does highlight a few broad points that a submission as a starting point could look to cover. In the interest of time, I won't speak to those points, but hand back to the chair for any questions and discussion. But just looking for your support, essentially.
Look, thanks, Luke. I think it's in pretty safe hands of the Transport Officers Group. We've already spoken of how valuable they have been in forming this. And we felt that the technical submission, as Lucas said, give more flexibility. We get into the emotional space. We've talked about rail at this for some time, so I wouldn't think there's not much that you don't understand about this. But Dan, you have a comment?
Just understanding, I don't have a problem with this being done, by the way. I think that's fine. But from a technical, so it will come from staff as opposed to elected members, is that what you're saying? Because if it was to become from elected members, it would be good to get the opinion of all of us before that, just to circulate that, like what normally happens with Miro Forum and other things. But I don't understand why it wouldn't come from the elected members, really, because it should really come from us.
Points well taken there in terms of trying to expedite this, I guess, for a process where everyone's got their billboards up on the side of the road now, and that we you know.
I think it comes down to the intent of the submission and what do you as RTC want to achieve through a submission on this inquiry. The thinking from staff and the advice from us as staff is that we really think it should be more of an information sharing exercise. It's almost more like a letter that outlines the work that's been done to date at a high level. And from the terms of reference that have been set up to guide the inquiry, that seems more where it's aimed in terms of what's going on, what are councils thinking about. So that was really what informed the recommendation for a staff submission. But it is up to you ultimately.
Yeah, sorry, just before you start, I'm happy enough to go around the room, and if there's support for what you're saying, then I think we can move on with that. But yeah, it's up to you.
Just simply a query, because I think it's a great opportunity to get in front of members of Parliament if they've asked for it. We should try and back it. My personal view. But we've got to come up with a collective message on what it is too. But if it's a snapshot of what we're doing, if that's that, well, there's a lot of work underway. Mass rapid transport, all those other MRT, all that work that's been done, the freight tour, all those other things. Is a really good narrative we could put in there as a collective.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, given that we've just received a research report that talks about, shifting modal experiences for people, I think I'm pretty comfortable that the officers draft, but given we won't come back together again, if it was circulated, so we can understand the intent or the context of the submission or the technical submission. I think that would be a good way forward, but I'm comfortable with the officers to draft
I support that too, Chairman.
You happy, Dan, then that we just go with recommendation?
I'm perfectly happy with it. I just wanted to pose the question, but as long as the officer's draft, it would be good to see a copy of it before it goes to make sure that we're comfortable with the content that comes on behalf of the RTC.
Well, I think that's what we'll make sure happens.
Yes, yeah, we can certainly circulate it. I think the only difference in terms of process would be if there is any feedback from yourselves, then that would ultimately be at the discretion of staff, so ultimately Jesse and Catherine, as opposed to through Peter as chair. But we can certainly circulate it. And
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Chair. I think there'll be, in addressing Mr. Mayor Dan's comments, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities as we move further into, as we've discussed with the committee previously, about doing the investigations into rail and what the opportunities are, that we will definitely be advocating for central government at some point, off the back of where their parliamentary inquiry goes, where our investigation work goes, and then taking that next step. And we've just seen through the recent emissions reduction plan being released, the actions around passenger transport in the region as well. So there's a whole lot of work that's all heading in the same direction. So I think there'll be plenty of opportunities to advocate to central government for rail in the future as well. So,
okay, thanks. We're just going to make an amendment to what you've got in your papers here to reflect the point that Dan has made and the feeling around the table that we need to at least check in before we actually put it in the mail. So if you put that up, please, Vivo. Oh, Mike.
Thank you. So can I just double check, because obviously the submissions, around the technical side of it, are we also going to ensure that we're going to be advocating, I guess, for rail investment, regional rail investment, in the submission for this region?
I think, so to answer you, Mr. Chair, I think that's part of the work that we signalled that we need to do as we move through with the RM reforms and regional spatial planning, and transport as being an element of that. The investigations into regional connectedness and growth, and rail as an option as part of that. So as we understand further what the system looks like going into the future, that's where we're starting to advocate for that opportunity through central government as well. So there's a point in time, I think we need to do the work, and then there's that opportunity after that.
So you don't think this is an opportunity just to throw a line in there about investment in the region?
In a broader sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something. Yeah, signal as we have previously. We can signal as we have previously that we seek further investment in the region, in our transport services, etc., and that's part of maybe the introductory narrative, if you like, in the paragraph that's in the letter that's sent.
If you look,
I
won't seek to make an amendment to 2. If everyone's happy with what's on the screen, we'll go with what's on the screen. So are you happy, Dan? Yeah. So moved by Mayor Gordon and seconded by Mayor Black. Are you happy? No?
But I think the wording probably and draft will be circulated to this committee prior to submitting. Should be the wording. Yeah, and I'm happy to second that. Thank you. I am.
Let's carry. So we now move to
8.5. This is Luke again. It's in reply to Mayor Brown's letter.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide advice to this committee on the issues raised by Mayor Neil Brown in his letter on 24th of May regarding road maintenance funding. So if you don't recall, at the last meeting, this committee resolved to request advice from Transport Officers Group on whether current funding mechanisms for road maintenance are sufficient to maintain appropriate levels of service, and if not, what new approaches could be considered. This was taken to the Transport Officers Group meeting about a month ago from today, and there was broad agreement amongst officers that current levels of funding are proving inadequate to maintain existing current levels of service. Whether that is appropriate is a different matter. And so we have referred this matter on to the Road Efficiency Group, which is the forum of road controlling authorities nationwide. We're doing a lot of work on data standards to have that discussion around what evidence could we pull together on the impacts of underfunding on our networks. So that's something that I'll be following up with the REG group about. A lot of the membership is the same between the two forums. So we're taking that away as an item to progress. What can we bring in terms of evidence back to this committee and just taking it through a process. The second point is we do need to have a discussion on funding that's signalled through the RLTP midterm review, and that and by we I mean a discussion amongst officers as well as amongst yourselves. So Claire and I are thinking about that as part of the RLTP midterm review. So two aspects to that: evidence and then the discussion on funding approaches. There was some discussion around the funding issue and both the short-term and the long-term approaches. In the short term, there are more limited avenues for securing additional funding for maintenance operations and renewals, one of which is putting forward an increased bid, which a number of our councils did in the last NLTP round, not only Ashburton, and also growing direct Crown funding sources for major capital projects and programs, which is also being pursued through the work of Greater Christchurch Partnership and other sources such as Streets for People, the surf funding, etc. In the long term, the NLTF, National Land Transport Fund, as a hypothecated fund, is being asked to do more than what it was originally set up to do, funding for maintenance and renewals. And there is a review of funding settings that is underway at the national level. So that's perhaps more of an advocacy piece, but I think further discussion on those funding aspects is most certainly warranted and should take place as part of that midterm review and our process around that. Yeah. Back to you.
Thanks, Peter. I read the last sentence or the last paragraph of my letter. Sometime in the future, we're going to hit a brick wall. And I wrote that letter on the 24th of May. We've now had a winter. We've hit the brick wall. And I know Ashburton, we've got potholes everywhere. We fix one, another one appears. And talking to people who have travelled the country, they're not just Ashburton, they're everywhere. Yeah. So the underfunding is stay, James, stay. So it's actually very timely. Yeah. Even travelled Dunedin last week, and the state highway's not in good shape either, which it used to be. So it's not just an Ashburton thing, it's possibly a New Zealand wide thing. So great, we've got the ball rolling, and we need more money, not just Ashburton, but everywhere to improve our roading. So great report, thanks.
So, yeah, thanks. Good paper, and thanks, Neil, for raising this issue, because it's a major across the country, and we had a meeting yesterday, I think it was, with James and Whakamutunga, and this major issue. But I do have some concern with our regional land transport, because when we did that midterm review, Mackenzie was granted some extra money that's never ever turned up. So I'm just wondering how much clout our regional land transport committee has in the big scene of the situation around roading, or does it have any clout at all?
rhetorical. I'll take it as a rhetorical question. Dan.
We speaking to this or questions? Yep. But just to say, thanks, Luke, for the report and Neil for raising it, because you're absolutely right. In all parts of our areas, we're experiencing, I get complaints all the time about potholes. We're about to put on we're considering extra staff to go around and audit ours, because it's the level of complaints we're receiving at the moment about it. The repairs go in there and they don't last. They come out virtually straight away. I did like me and Neil's suggestion, which was emailed, I think, to all of us, which is taking up a meeting with Sir Brian Roach and others around funding and general issues. He did look to ask for regional representatives, but it looks like everyone wants to go, which I think, well, that's strength in numbers, isn't it, really? But I think it's timely that this is raised, but also what are we going to do about it? And I think Neil's suggestion, me and Neil from New Plymouth's suggestion of a meeting which picks up on the remit that was passed at LGNZ AGM is the right course of action, because we can easily put more money in as councils, but we're not going to get it matched by NZTA. And the NLTP, RLTP process is still a long time away. I'd love the checkbook out, James. Or just a direct credit is fine. But we appreciate the challenges that are going on at the NZTA level. But equally, they need to hear from us what our concerns are, so when they're considering it. But maintenance is absolutely essential. If we don't get that right, then our roads are just going to fall apart.
Okay. Graham, just responding to you, I think we should take that on advice, and that RLTP thing you said, because I wasn't aware of that, but we will get back to you on that. Yeah, Craig, and then Nigel, and then James.
Thanks for that. You had a great report, and it's a great initiative by Neil from up north about going and seeing Sir Brian Roche. But let's face it, he's the outgoing chair of NZTA. I think that as a group, we should be writing to the minister, demanding that the funding that is collected for roads is spent on roads. The fact that it's going to safer roads, cycling, coastal shipping, and rail needs to stop. The roading money that's collected on roads, and we know from the data that we have that Neil that we were speaking about before, is that we're collecting more than we're spending in our areas. And I think that we need to get a bit hard-nosed about this and tell them that it's time they started spending the money collected on the roads, spending on roads, and they need to find alternative funding for coastal shipping, safer cycling, and also the Road to Zero.
Hey, thanks, Craig. Listen, I'm going to change the batting order. James, you're going to go last here, and so Nigel.
And this is not having a crack at what that's at.
No, it's totally fine.
No, it's not their fault.
Look, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Look, I mean, this was signalled a year ago when we were underfunded through our LTPs, and you know, it's a broader policy setting with government, and you know, I don't disagree that there should be a policy setting around, you know, rail and cycleways, etc. But we all know that it needs additional funding, and that's the key thing to this. You can't, you know, take a couple of billion out of road, you know, funding and put it somewhere else and not expect there to be some issues. And yeah, I don't blame Whakamutunga at all. I think they're our friends in this situation, but it's broader policy settings. So I think it's, you know, for groups such as this to be standing up and you know, having those conversations at the highest level, which is with the minister. And otherwise, this is going to, you know, be an ongoing issue. But it does, and I know we're just talking about roading here, but it does speak to central government policy settings and the underfunding of our beautiful region called Canterbury across multiple sectors. Yeah. Thanks.
No, actually, I will not comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And look,
Thank you, Luke, for the report. Thank you, Neil, for the letter. I think you raised the timely issue that, frankly, even if you had written the letter, we'd be talking about now anyway because of the winter we've had. You're right to note this is an issue being experienced across the country, because it is, and it's being experienced by all of you. I think one avenue that is worth noting that exists for some of you in the very near term, that some of you have already exercised, is the meetings that, yes, you will all be having, except for Mike, with the Associate Minister of Transport. So Murray, Haranui District, Dan, Waimakariri District, and Sam Selwyn. You've already had yours, but others, I understand. Kerry McAnally still is due to come and meet with you. I know because I'll be there, and I've been at the ones that have already existed. All the councils have already had them have raised maintenance as an issue there, and I would encourage you all. I fully expect you to anyway, but to raise it as an issue when you have that opportunity, because I think it is a worthy forum to raise the issue and run through the particular aspects for your district at that time. I think any effort to raise local government's experience of maintenance funding with ourselves, with our chairman, or with the minister should, frankly, in this environment, be encouraged. I don't think anything is wasted effort, even if Sir Brian is departing the chair. But I did want to just reassure the committee that we are experiencing it on our state highway network too. I got the graphs, charts, to prove it. And we are communicating the issue to ministers as much as we can as well. That isn't to say that raising it isn't worth it. It's just to say your voice helps keep the issue front and centre, because it is a real issue that we are experiencing the results of stretching the maintenance and renewals budget too far for too long, and quite literally the roads are cracking, getting wet, and the patches aren't holding. We'll see what we can achieve through the summer construction period, but it won't. We know that won't be enough. And Neil, to your point, it's been in the media again this week. The rate at which we are doing the rehabs with the money that is available isn't enough to catch up. And so we do look forward to the report from Reg Group, because we do need to understand what good enough looks like in terms of funding, so that you can have a serious conversation about what enough looks like.
Who aren't part of that forum. The Miro Forum did invite the Deputy CE of the Ministry of Transport to the last Miro Forum, one Alan Prangnell, who was known to us in the different guise before he hopped into transport. And he fully admitted that the model is broken. So hearing James say, yes, there's not enough money, the Deputy CE of the Ministry of Transport is saying the model is broken. You don't have to prove the case. We've actually got to move to now starting to think about what a different model is, because it just simply can't. The case is made. It's now about how does more money flow into the system under a different model than is arriving now, and getting that largely through, in my opinion, through the Ministry of Transport, because that's who sets the budget for Whakatahi. So Miro Forum has started that work, Peter.
Thank you. Actually, I will speak, because quite frankly, I was a little bit disappointed with one of the comments that was made. People that bike are people that are using the road. And actually, what we do know is actually only 22% of people that bike are confident and not concerned about having an accident. There's an issue there. And that actually needs an investment. What we all know is that the funding model does not work. So we shouldn't be attacking other modes of transport that use the road to try and make the funding model work. We should be looking to address that issue of the funding model to actually achieve all the outcomes we need to achieve. We had a really good session first up that actually explained that we need to do things slightly different if we're going to meet some of our climate challenges, and we're not going to achieve that by tacking modes of transport. We don't do that around footpaths and people that walk. And so it's always concerning when I hear it aimed at people that bike. They most of them own cars, most of them pay their registrations and will get petrol. They're contributing to the maintenance of roads. So I think if we want to do things together, we need to actually stop attacking different modes of transport and realise we actually need to look at the funding sources, how that's not actually achieving our desired goals, which is actually, to fix the maintenance, which was also an issue in Christchurch City, but also address some of the climate challenges we do have. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Through no one's attacking other modes of transport. It's the funding model. I just want to clarify that. I think cycling and walking is great and that sort of thing, but the funding model we have doesn't cater for it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Look, we will move on, but thank you, James. You keep turning up, which is great. Which is great, and you've been very open and honest with everybody all the way through this, and so it's just an iterative process, isn't it, until we get this thing right. And I take on board Hamish's point. Thank you, Hamish, for that. The 8.4, 8.5 recommendation is on the screen in front of us. But
Mr. Chair, the papers, if you just keep going through the agenda, it's probably in the order of importance as it is anyway. If there is something that we don't get to today, could be carried forward to the next meeting as well.
Okay, 8.6 then, the speed management piece of work. Is that you clear? Thank you. And I think this is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's an information paper, so if you want to take it as read and ask me any questions about speed management.
Let's do that. Let's do that. Is there anybody that's got any inquiry around this from Claire? Sam?
Yeah, lots of conversations about speed limit changes, and the response seems to keep coming back that actually we can't sort of just do that piece or this piece because there's a bigger, wider discussion, as you're putting here, that sort of needs to happen before we start to see some of the individual sections of road be able to be changed. And so just wanting some guidance around how much of this work needs to be completed before each of us can actually just get on and do some of the things within our councils that needs to be implemented around speed limit reviews.
So there's kind of three parts to the, now that the new rules in place, understanding the implementation of it. One is what do we want to do as Canterbury? Another one is the local roads and how do local councils, because the decision still sits with the local councils, do that. And then what will it look like at the regional level and a regional speed management plan? So the discussions to date at the staff level, so I intend to bring back options to the committee next meeting, whenever that might be, November or February, once we've worked that out. But at the moment, the discussions are very much around councils just getting on with it, because it's different for different regions across New Zealand. And some regions, like in Northland, where they have the Northland Transport Agency, it's a regional speed management plan, and they're just cracking on and getting on with it because that's what it looks like in that region. In our region, regional council is not resourced in any way, shape or form to undertake any sort of speed management planning or consultation. If councils want to get on with it, I think the rule enables that.
Second questions around the setting of speed limits on gravel roads, and it's come up a few times around how we might do something as a region rather than just each district have different limits on gravel roads. The paper that you're bringing back to us, will that bring some suggestions about how we have a blanket 80-kilometre speed limit pick a number, kilometre speed limit less than 100 on all gravel roads in Canterbury?
Yeah, so we're having conversations now about the series of workshops that we're going to have, what each of those workshops is going to cover. We've had the first workshop already, which was about principles, and the subsequent workshops will then look at more of the details. Yeah, so it's like there's so much work to do to figure this out, and I'd really have loved to have come with something more concrete, but we're just not there yet.
So, yeah, thanks, Claire. And I'm sure James will back me up. Given the state of the roads and safety, wouldn't you think speed reduction across the region would be a high priority project for you at the moment?
So the main focus is how do we go about implementing the rule, and then what would the speeds be after that? So working out how do we work together to do speed management in the region. So that is on our work program as a piece of work to carry forward. The piece that I'm like the officers that are working on what's the right speeds in the right areas, and what I'm working on is what does this mean for the regional council, because it's a new role, and so we kind of have to unpick that and the different operational, financial, reputational risks for the regional council of doing a regional speed management plan and how to mitigate that.
Well, I don't know how it's going to be done, but I certainly say it needs to be regional, and we need to have a set standard of speeds across the whole district rather than us have individual speeds on our roads.
The intent is consistency. Yeah, and absolutely, that's a core part of the safety as well, is that people can drive along and they're not having a different experience of different speeds in different parts of New Zealand or the region, and it kind of being like quite a movable feast. But at the same time, there's an acknowledgement that the system of 50 or 100 is not fit for purpose, and there's got to be a lot more nuance in how the speeds are set, and it's working out that right balance as well. Using the guidance that Whakamutunga put a massive amount of effort in to create.
If I may add, the conversation at a regional level, there's broad agreement on the need for consistency.
Yeah.
It's not just consistency in terms of the speed limits once implemented, but in terms of the timing and the sequencing, where and how it gets funded as well. So
the funding, the types of signage, the whole consistency.
Those conversations are already underway, and then there is a public engagement aspect which is quite separate again, but we're progressing on with the consistency, but with a bit of a question. I mean, the problem with this though is that it's taken so long, and across all our areas we do need to change some speed limits, etc. And while the roads deteriorate and we don't do that work, and I know in our area we've got some ones that aren't technically changed, but we've got some we've changed some signage which probably doesn't tick all the boxes, but we're doing interim solutions to keep people safe. But we actually this needs to be a real priority. Yeah,
I guess you hear that, which is good, and I think within the recommendations here it does point to the fact that these are safety-driven concerns, and given the conversation about the state of the roads, I think there's an urgency around this. So, I mean, if you can take that on board, we'd be happy. I know you're busy. I know transport officers are busy, but they do tend to provide some pretty solid advice through to us on these things. So, thank you. We'll put that.
Just one question: when would this work be completed? Because do we read here by March 23, this work will be completed on the speed review? Is that still on track?
So the paper to this committee will be completed by then. Different councils are at different rates of change on their own speed planning across the region at the moment. So there's a workshop to look at timing and sequencing coming up. Yeah.
Our direction is we want to empower the local transport officers to just get on with it, we're having separate discussions with Whakamutunga about what's our role as regional council in that process, and how does that all work out? That's that.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Claire. Recommendations now on the board, and we'll scroll down to 3. They're in your paper also. So could I have a mover, please, for that? Thanks, Graham. The second, thanks, Nigel. Sorry, James, I missed you. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. That's carried. Say thank you. So 8.7. This is you again, Luke. Is this we skip through this, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, look, we can skip through this fairly quickly. So this is reporting back to you on the development of the remaining key measures in the RLTP monitoring framework. So casting our minds right back to when the RLTP was adopted back in May last year, the RLTP, there were 19 measures agreed across 5 outcome areas, and 3 of these measures, and a number of those we had yet to identify key data sources, and we had it as an action to come back to you on those. So this report is coming back to you to say that we have secured data sources for reporting on transport access, active transport, and transport system impacts on wellbeing on 3 of those. And that's been a bit of background piece of work for us for quite a while. I won't go into too much detail because there is quite a lot of information in this report on what we've identified and what it does and doesn't. What the limitations with some of those data sources are, because there are some limitations associated with them as well. In terms of next steps, now that we have identified some data sources and a reporting methodology for these measures, we intend to include it in the next annual monitoring report up to this committee, which will come to you at your next meeting of the incoming committee in November. And we'll continue working with Whakamutunga and with others to source data on the 2 measures that are outstanding, and that's monthly average travel time on key corridors for Greater Christchurch and monthly variability on key corridors in Greater Christchurch. We've got a fair amount of confidence around getting something for those. It's just a matter of time.
Is that Luke? Oh, sorry, Luke. Yeah, Kerry.
There's the piece on wellbeing is quite innovative. That was done by our new strategy advisor, Laura Dance, I think, over there, and taking the Māori health framework Te Whare Tapa Whā and applying it to wellbeing and looking at appropriate transport indicators for that. And the Ministry of Transport has indicated interest in our work on that.
No, thanks. Any discussion around this, Graham?
Yes, I see here this is a sustainable transport network that is integrated with land use. Can you just explain a bit more why it is with land use? And when I see Sunday the other night, and sorry, Sam, the development of land use around Lincoln that's going to sprawl out for 400 odd houses, I'm just wondering how you get sustainability when we allow urban sprawl like that.
That's one of the outcome areas in the RLTP. It's a separate part of our work program under the growth.
It's just a straight cut and paste out of the RLTP that kind of wording.
So it's not being recommended. It's not something that is being litigated.
Yeah.
This is
it works on the data.
Yeah, this paper is really information sharing in terms of these are the key data sources we've identified for reporting on the measures underneath that header as an issue, which is part of the RLTP. So if that is an issue, there will be an opportunity to review that.
Yeah, we can review that.
It's part of the midterm review.
Thank you. Having said that, you make a good point, actually. But we're waiting for the regional spatial plan to arrive and then get all sorted out from there. No, thank you. Thanks for that, Lou. Any more discussion from Claire and Luke? Otherwise, we won't. We'll go to the The recommendation 8.7, have a mover and a second. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Nigel. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. So thank you for that. 8.8, again, Claire, we're at with this.
Yeah, so this is just the paper. We did a workshop on the approach to the RLTP, and this is the paper bringing back based on that guidance. So the RLTP review, we're going to kick that off. It's got really short timeframes this time round. Part of the key focuses will be sorting out emissions reduction, improving the effectiveness of our approach with Māori, pulling forward the funding piece. Last time, I think the funding was came right at the end, the funding discussion. So bringing that right forward in the piece as being up front, and one of the first things the income committee will start looking at is the funding piece, and also innovation and understanding the level of innovation that's happening across Canterbury. So those are kind of the 4 work streams of the project, and acknowledging that the issues actually kind of remain the same in terms of maintenance, freight, resilience, emissions. So those won't get dropped off. That's kind of the summary. Any questions? So this is in the guidance on the development of the regional land transport plan, there's a part between the objectives and policies being set and then the establishment of priorities, which involves a ILM with problem statements. So we could do that at the staff level and build that out as underpinning documents and bring that advice back.
Thank you. Question, when's the review likely to be completed?
So the aim is to, so next year will be, we're aiming to have by February the 10 years priorities and 10-year objectives and priorities by February. And then it will roll forward into there. The prioritisation ranking of projects will be more towards the latter half of next year. And then probably 3 to 6 months after that will be the consultation, hearings and deliberations. So we're aiming to have it approved around the April before LTPs, so that we're not trying to, so that you're kind of freed up for your LTP stuff. Trying to pull it about 3 months earlier, so it's not landing at the same time. Absolutely, yeah.
Got through the point that regional land transport plan is one bridge in Ashburton to go on it.
So you got that one in.
Which now has its business case is completed. Oh, perfect.
Thank you, and noted. The recommendation there for 8.8 is on the screen, and it's also in your papers. Thank you, Neil, for moving that, and thank you, Graham, for seconding that. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. Now, the 8.9 is the TOG Regional Road Safety Working Group. That is information for us, essentially, Claire.
Yeah, basically those discussions informed all the papers you've just been through.
Just to say, look, we're at the end of the term, and I actually really enjoyed chairing this committee. We're now starting to get to a process where we're getting some progress on reporting. It's really good the transport officers coming together, and as we do, and it's a privilege. It's a pleasure to chair, and I'd just like to acknowledge the staff for their support in assisting us with this. But it's been one of those committees I've actually, as I said, just really enjoyed being part of, and we've refocused it, and it's making some real progress. So thanks, team.
Dan, we'll put that recommendation up also, and then we've got that piece of general business that we're going to get back to. So recommendation 8.9 is on the screen. Could I have a move, please? Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Mike. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against carried. So if we just circle back, I guess, to this, the public forum that we always get this wrong, public forum that we had, and Rollo's presentation to us. And Sam's point was we're going to discuss that. Our usual process, sorry, Sam, from here is that we will acknowledge that and write back. But if you want a more direct communication with him, I think we talk about that now.
I was just wanting clarity on what was going to happen. Were we expecting staff to, to draft something that was going to go back, say thanks for the presentation, and is that the end of it, or actually is there what is the follow up to an idea?
With all those types of things that come into this room, there is a recommendation given, and we always do another contact with them, which Jesse will take on board. Jess?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, we'll follow up following the forum just to acknowledge Rollo Wenlock's contribution of the committee. I've previously met with Rollo about yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, to talk about the concept of the rail cars, and just for the committee's comfort. There's a whole lot of work that still has to happen around the regional rail investigations piece, which we did present to you when we had WSP speak to you at a meeting before last, I think it was. So this is a solution. We need to do the planning work first to understand actually what we really need to move towards. So we'll stay in contact with Rollo as well in terms of the work that we're doing and keep him informed. But certainly there'll be opportunities down the track, I think, for further innovation in this space as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Yeah, are you happy, Sam? Yeah, that's good. So now we're right at item 9, which is the next meeting, and good luck to everyone that is going to put the hoardings up. I'm going to try and do some this weekend. Next meeting is on the Thursday, the 24th at 4 o'clock, 24th November, and I know you'll be here, Mark. Great. All right. Okay. Okay, I don't want to keep you. I don't want to keep you from Peppers because that's your next destination. So I'll just finish with a Karakia. Anuhia, 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 anuhia kiti uru tapanui o tāne kia wātia kia mama ti nakau ti tina na ti wairua iti arotakata kārai e rongo whakakari ake kia runga kia tina haumie huie. Kia ora and thanks, and we'll see you again.